vote we could do at this point, and we are committed going forward to ensure that we are in compliance at every meeting. I also want to say that we have also taken steps to ensure that that access to our board meetings is published everywhere it needs to be. That is on the Secretary of State's website and prominently on our own website. We will continue to ensure that that is the case going forward. Again, looking backwards, while the board did meet remotely, or were most of the members present remotely for a number of meetings, members of the public always had access. They were always invited to contact the board for access, either in person or remote access. So we emphasized through a very challenging period of time with COVID, we emphasized performing on the mission of the board. That is, we continued to license psychologists during a period of time where the need for psychologists and other mental health professionals was increasing. And we continued to process complaints, thereby protecting the public. So those, of course, are our main missions and duties as board members. So it's not that we made a conscious choice to flaunt the law. We certainly did not. We were simply focused otherwise, and we regret that and have a plan going forward.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate the acknowledgement, and certainly the intent sounds like was not to thumb your nose at the law or what the legislature passed and the governor signed into law. And so I think that's important to hear. So thank you. Members, questions? Yes, Senator Kelly.
So to kind of reaffirm, and thank you for being here this morning, sir. You went back and reaffirmed basically the decisions that were made on the meetings in question.
We did.
Okay.
Everyone.
Every one of them.
Everyone.
Thank
Yes.
you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Simpson.
Dr. Cook, thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for taking seriously the concerns that we've addressed. I am noticing that you are Dr. Cook.
Yes.
And you have a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about your expertise? What's your background?
Yeah, so I was trained as a psychologist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. My focus was on anxiety disorders and emotional disorders, more generally mood disorders, particularly focused on biological aspects of those disorders. As a member of the faculty at UAB, I have been my career has gone through several phases. In the past, I was primarily a researcher. I have, in more recent years, and actually over the last 12 years, have directed the clinical psychology training program, which has given me exposure to and got me involved in a wide range of mental health issues. And, I interact on a daily basis with more than 50 faculty members distributed across the university and in some affiliated community settings.
Great, thank you. And how often are you, is Miss Lori Rawl still the executive director?
She is.
And how often are you in contact with Miss Lori Rawl?
Well, I'm in contact with her in preparation for every board meeting and, of course, at every board meeting. And I would say probably on average once or twice in between board meetings. But these days we are busier, not just responding to the audit report, but also there are a couple of executive orders that we are following up on, and I mentioned those in the report, which I failed to refer to, but I think you have that in front of you, the bullet points. So we're busy looking at our regulations in the administrative code, going through them, inventorying them, looking at which of those are discretionary, that is not tied to the statutes. And so we've had multiple meetings over the past few months. So it's It's as need requires.
As executive director, has Ms. Raw talked to you about the significant findings of the legislature and how you guys can work together to address those significant findings?
Absolutely. And we are both committed, I would say the entire board is committed to addressing those findings. So this is certainly not me speaking just for myself. It's for the entire board and staff.
And if Ms. Raw was to make a recommendation to you to kind of draw your attention to a significant issue, is that something that you guys, and I thank you for what you've done. And I'm not, this has something to do with you, but not everything to do with you.
That's fine. Please.
So you guys as a board would listen to the executive director. If the executive director says, we really need to address this issue, this isn't something where you just say, I'm not paying attention to what the executive director has to say. We're going to try to solve this issue.
No, those words would never pass our lips.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Senator Kelly?
Yes.
Just a comment, sir, with your credentials and all, after the legislature gets through with redistricting, we could use your services.
Amen. I was wondering if you said focus on biological impact or conditions. Environmental, I think, should be a part of your practice maybe
No,
here. So.
I promise not to bring that up. So
Yes, sir.
I have no comment.
Representative Wilcox?
I was just reviewing your website. It seems very comprehensive, and I compliment you on that. It does look like you have the things that the board intend to do, so you seem to be very well communicating where I could look it up.
Thank you for that. And I just want to say that board staff, primarily, Ms. Rawl and Ms. Ledbetter, have worked very hard on that in collaboration, obviously, with technical support. So that has been a major effort over the past, I think, perhaps 9 months, maybe more.
And I would have a comment offline on that. I did have a little trouble finding the minutes, but I did find them, but they just weren't right there with the board where I thought it was. But good job overall. Great website.
Thank you.
Does your board have any intentions, or I didn't get a chance to comprehensively read on cutting any fees to your applicants or cutting any paperwork or requirements in order to help them? And if so, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so we intend for our fees to generally sustain the operations of the board, and we have not had any discussion of cutting fees. We did raise fees, I guess, for the current fiscal year. In terms of reducing the regulatory burden or the burden of maintaining licensure, we are very much involved in an effort to switch to electronic communication. So we've already, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe more, switched to electronic submission of continuing education credits. And with this upcoming relicensing period, there will be electronic submission of license renewal forms and also license renewal fees. So that doesn't reduce the fee, but it does, I believe, as somebody who's been paying these fees over many years, I would say that definitely reduces the burden for licensees.
Okay, thank you. And then I noticed I was looking at your pass-fail rate for your examinations. Do y'all have a committee that kind of evaluates the schools teaching that and making sure that their pass-fail rate is acceptable? Like I said, it looks like you're doing good, but I do like to watch that and make sure that we have association has a place to go in and a council to higher ed to make sure that their people are insured passing the test or at least coming as close as they can.
Yeah, so I won't say that we have a committee, but it is an issue that we discussed from time to time, discussed it as recently as this past Friday. It's important to recognize, and it's there, but it's very subtle in the materials you've received, that most of the people who are applying for licensure in the state of Alabama were not trained in Alabama. And so we have limited leverage in that sense in terms of affecting our pass-fail rates. the institutions in Alabama that train psychologists do pretty well in terms of pass-fail rates, generally 90% or higher. That's kind of where we are with that. We also have been talking about ways to help people prepare for the licensing exam, and that's an issue that's, let's say, on our longer-term agenda, but it is something that I'm hoping we can get to over the next 6 to 9 months.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, any other questions, comments, or concerns? If not, Dr. Cook, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate your time and explanations, and look forward to addressing the issue of what the recommendation of the Sunset Committee is at the appropriate time we get through all of these processes. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Since we've got a few minutes, running a little bit ahead of schedule, Madam Co-Chair, you want to kind of address some issues or concerns that just broadly that you'd like to point out to the committee and some thoughts you've got?
Thank you. Yes, sir. I have put on your desk some handouts that I emailed you yesterday that were from the meeting that I referenced in Charleston. So I hope you'd review those handouts. And then the focus that I would like for us to do is on what we can do to improve the process for the citizens and any fees. So, Boyd, do you have about 1 minute? You can come up here and give an example of an example that we've already heard of that I want to set the tone for the other boards that I'd like to hear over the next 4 years.
Our fellow licensees sitting here representing. So there's an article in the Alabama Daily News a couple of days ago where a reporter came and visited our board for our board meeting, which has never happened before, which was quite nerve-wracking, by the way. I know what y'all feel like now. Every word might end up in that article. But two things that were pointed out in that article, and we are sort of unique in that we are extremely conservative, as you would imagine, with a board member of 6 CPAs and 1 banker. We have been able to keep a tight rein on expenditures, and over time, we've built up a little bit of cash reserve, and we had the decision to make: do we reduce fees for licensees, which would be $3.85 a year? That didn't seem very impactful. Or we would reduce the fees for the exam candidates to help the pipeline. We have pipeline issues. Every profession has pipeline issues. We have really increased pipeline issues. So the board took the position to eliminate waive fees for exam candidates, and has for the last 3 years, and that's cost us between $50,000 and $60,000 annually. And I think that's been a good use of funds. We've also been able to, at this last meeting, reduce regulation. So the CPA exam has historically been an 18-month rolling period to get the exam completed. When I say historically, 22 years it's been this way. But we just changed that and increased it to 30. And there's a national effort. So far, 22 jurisdictions have adopted 30. I'm the executive director committee chair for NASBA this year, so I'll be out pushing that so we stay consistent and remain substantially equivalent. We're one of the few professions we are substantially equivalent out of all 55 jurisdictions, and we're very proud of that, and we're going to maintain that. But that's two things that Representative Wilcox had mentioned at the meeting and was also mentioned at the article that wanted to pass along.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming down and be available. So that's the tone for what I would like to do as the co-chair of this committee and see all of the boards that come before us. And so I know we have some listening remotely, and we have some board members that also share. I'm sure we all share the same goal, but this was my shining example of our first meeting to kind of feature, and thank you for your indulgence.
just like to say how proud I am that my board, my only board, is the one that's setting the tone, and so that makes me proud. Thank you, sir.
Well, I hope we're going to have many more beyond him, but I thought, he's one of them that responded. Full disclosure, I've known Boyd since childhood, and he was one of the first people that reached out to get to know me when I got this appointment. So I've been trying to work with him and learn from their organization and learn from all the organizations that come forward.
I just kind of want to point out for everybody so that, we saw what happened Tuesday. I do want people to understand and kind of compare and contrast what we're looking at. If you look at the executive director, Ms. Raw, her salary in that was $89,479. They licensed 1,115 individuals in 2022. Their receipts in 2022 were 328,273. So you're looking less than a third of their receipts being paid to an executive director.
To dovetail on that, I think they have a total of 2 employees for 1,100. How many licensees? 1,115 or 1,100? And something. Yeah, I made note of that in my records too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we're all looking. A common thread here is we're looking for efficiencies, and we're looking at ratios that are acceptable by normal business means, especially when you're dealing with the money and the funds that we are. And I think when you look at burdensome administrative cost and fees, and it's a competitive market out there, and I do understand that. But accountability is here with this committee. For any of those that are listening, I can tell you that this is one, and I think I speak for others here as well, that there is accountability here now, and we're going to do our best to make sure that these organizations are run efficiently and that there is accountability in place. So I appreciate the efforts of the other members of the Sunset Committee.
Well, I'm muddling through it. She's got it in hand. So, Ms. Riddle, would you mind if I put you on the spot, and could you kind of give us an idea, just generally at least, what effect the governor's executive orders are having on boards across the state?
Okay, so these executive orders, I'm sure you've heard a little bit about them, started coming out. I don't remember, almost a year ago, and a lot of them were geared towards state agencies and boards and commissions, and most of them, things like, and you'll see this as we go through the sunset process, some boards and commissions have outside checking accounts. Well, the executive order is requiring them in most instances to move to the state treasury. So those are some things we've been working with them on. They call us for advice generally on this because they want to make sure when we come in after they do that they've done it correctly. So that's one thing, and that's going to be a big change for some boards because the way state government is set up, there's a lot of internal controls built in if your money is in the treasury. The comptroller, for lack of a better word, almost pre-audits to some extent payments. If you have a checking account, you just write it like you and I write a check out of our checking account. So those internal controls aren't in place. So that'll be a step for those entities that wasn't there before. Something else, and this is what Representative Wilcox is talking about a lot. They did a whole EO on looking at your administrative rules and getting rid of rules that are overburdensome, kind of like a red tape reduction type thing. So the governor's office has charged state agencies to do that. So you'll see some of that happening with boards and commissions because of that EO also. So there's a lot of moving parts. I will say the governor's office is working with all the agencies to see which ones need to, the EO should apply to, which ones they shouldn't, which ones should move into. You can get an exception to moving into the treasury because there might be instances where that's not the most efficient thing. So they're working through that. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to audit to those EOs when we go in, and you'll see some of that popping up in your sunset reviews and in the legal compliances that will be forwarding to you. So there's an effort on that side of the street also. And I think probably over the next couple of years, y'all will see some of that coming out in this report.
The deadline for the exemptions, was that the end of last month, first of this month, some time frame?
If I remember correctly, it was July 1
Okay.
that they had to ask and get that.
Do you have access, or do you know how many different agencies, boards, commissions actually ask for an exemption?
I do not, but that is something we're going to have to know, and we have communicated that. We got to know what y'all are exempting and not, because at the end of the day, we're the check on it all, and we got to know whether they're doing it the way they're supposed to be doing or not. So we're going to have to work with the governor's legal office and see what they did at the end of the day with all that.
And I'm assuming to the extent that a commission board is not exempt, or is not exempt, that there's a change in the rules during that potential review process to where you may have a couple of months that they're under the old way, and then now they're not a checking account agency. They are under Treasury, right?
Yes, which makes it real fun to audit.
I'm
As
sure.
you can see in some of our findings, you'll see us give a lot of dates with the EOs from COVID, because you were under this rule for this period of time, and then it swapped to this, and then, so that makes it a little harder on us. But yes, we do take the time frames and use the law that applies at that very moment.
Do you know if in that governor's order, if there's a time period by which the governor has to grant an exemption or not, or make a decision on that request?
I do not think they put a time
Okay.
on themselves.
It wouldn't seem, which times you wouldn't want to tie your own hands, but yeah, I'm hopeful that some of those requests will be resolved pretty quickly, and that won't stretch out for longer periods of times, which again makes your job more difficult coming up this next cycle. So
It's created a lot of chatter among everyone. So
sure. Senator Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate how you're doing your reports and how they're coming forward, especially when we can look back and kind of see the longevity of certain findings being continued from 1 year to with little action or resolve. Because I would love nothing more. It better than if there's what red tape we can cut. And, there may be some boards that need to be combined with others or completely done away with that may not be relevant anymore. So I think as we try to cut these red tapes, I appreciate you and your staff for how you're generating those reports that allow us to see those trends over a longer period of time. So I just want to thank you for that.
you're welcome.
Members, any other comments, questions from Ms. Riddle? All right, thank you. All right, we're not going to be exact, but I got about 4 minutes before. I'm sure we'll be close enough for what they say government work. Let's hear from Alcohol Beverage Control Board. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee members. Just a couple of brief comments, if you will. Of course, the mission of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board is protect and support the public health, safety, and welfare by regulating the distribution, import, manufacture, and sale of alcoholic beverages, demonstrated by professionalism, integrity, education, and transparency. The first thing in there is protecting the public. And so I like to compare what we do to a three-legged stool. We protect the public first. We provide products that people want, adults want to responsibly consume, and we provide funds to the state and local governmental entity. I'll talk a little bit about each of those, if you will. So we issue licenses. We have about 12,800 licensed locations in Alabama. That includes locations that handle alcohol as well as sell tobacco products. There are about 17,000 individual alcohol licenses because a given location can have multiple licenses, one for beer, one for wine, et cetera. And there are 8,400 tobacco permits at those 12,800 locations. Each year, there are about 2,000 new applicants that we have to vet that are not renewals. And there's a vetting process, and background checks and all those things. So we do that on about 2,000 locations a year. We also conduct 3,900 last year alcohol inspections to make sure that those who sell these licensed products are meeting the age and the location restriction requirements. So products that should be behind the counter are behind the counter. They're not selling to people who are not of the age that they should buy them. And important to us is that we have ALEA do inspections of our stores. So our employees are subject to the same review that anyone in a private store that sells alcohol would be. Thirdly, in protecting the public, we conducted 157 programs that we call our underage under arrest programs at 131 different high schools last year. These programs teach kids the dangers of drinking and driving, teach them about the dangers of drinking, period, because some people think it's fun, but they don't realize what the dangers are. We have now exceeded 500 programs since the inception of this in 2013, and that includes 2 years during COVID when we didn't do any programs. And we also sponsor a substance abuse youth summit where we bring together people who deal with kids who have these kind of substance abuse problems, not just alcohol, but included in that are teachers, policemen, firemen, counselors. We bring them together so we can coordinate what we do to work with these kids. So I think we do a good job protecting the public. Secondly, in providing the products, we sold over 3.8 million cases of spirit-based alcohol last year. We don't sell through the ABC board beer or wine, just spirits. That's 3,500 stock keeping units of products. So responsible adults do have a choice. We make sure there's a good selection out there that they can find what they want to responsibly and safely consume. We also wholesale to about 700 private liquor stores that get their product from us, and they sell throughout the state. So products are available in our 168 retail stores and these private stores throughout the state. Last year, our sales were $724 million, which includes $21 million of sales tax. So over $700 million, not counting the sales tax. Thirdly, the third leg of our stool is we ensure that state and local governmental entities receive distributions from these products. So of that $724 million, $354 million was distributed in some way or another to other state agencies and local governmental entities. So that's more than 50% of the dollars that came in, we actually distributed to some governmental entity. We also have 900 individuals that we employ. We pay $33 million in salaries to those people. And we operate over 170 properties, and we pay about $1 million a month or $12 million a year in rent. So we put a lot of money into the state economy that way. So it's important to us that we keep this stool in balance so that we are providing the products, providing the funds for the governmental entities, and protecting the public. We think that the way we are, our citizens pay the least amount for the amount that the state entities receive. We operate at cost. All of our profits are distributed, and they're included in that distribution. And that's the last thing I'd like to mention is who gets the $354 million. The general fund last year got $130 million, human resources $84 million, mental health $63 million, education trust fund directly got $22 million, the law enforcement agency got $16.8 million, and sales tax that we paid to the Department of Revenue for further distribution was $21 million, and the cities and counties got directly $14 million. So we provide a lot of funds to the various agencies of the state. And if there are any questions from the committee, I have my senior people here. We'd be glad to give you whatever answers you want, but that's the end of the remarks I wanted to make. Hopefully you won't consider not renewing the ABC board. And I'm glad someone said that a third of the revenues is a reasonable salary for the executive, but I don't want, what would that be, about $250 million? I don't want that. I'm not requesting that.
Great, like that.
Half of that would be acceptable to you then, is what you're saying?
Yeah, some fraction of that.
You take one for the team. I'm going to show my ignorance. Mr. Stewart, commissioner, administrator, What
My
official
title?
Title, yes, sir.
Administrator.
Okay, administrator. I was going.
I'm usually called director, but I answer to whatever you call me.
I got you. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments, members. Representative Simpson.
Since we're having this discussion, I just want to bring it to everyone. You're going to catch a theme today. Okay. Tell me if I'm wrong with these numbers.
Okay,
You're responsible for 12,800 locations.
that's correct.
You're responsible for 17,000 licenses.
17,000 alcohol licenses, not counting tobacco.
Alcohol. How many tobacco are you ready?
8,400.
8,400. Just his what his speech that he gave. You have over 900 employees.
That's correct.
You have receipts of over $724 million.
That was last year's number, and we're running approximately 5% ahead of that so far this year.
I don't want to go too public, but it's public. This is what we're here for. Your salary is $212,000.
That is correct.
I'd point out to the board too. It appears to me, certainly a very large and extensive throughout the state, touches all corners, and the numbers that Representative Simpson just said, quite a large agency division, no significant issues found.
That's correct.
I think that in and of itself is pretty telling. I mean, because quite honestly, some of these significant issues I'm not demeaning a significant issue, but some of them are just as simple, we just messed up this one time in this one area. But a department, an agency, board that is this large, doing that much business with no significant issues is pretty impressive in my mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate that. And we want to serve the public because we do sell stuff to people. And if they don't like us, we don't treat them right, they don't buy stuff from us. There are the 700 private liquor stores in the state. So we're trying to provide good customer service. And if we do, then it shows in the way people respond to us. So I appreciate your comments, sir.
A good product and good service usually means that you can stay in business and provide the public with what they need. So, Senator Kelly.
I just wanted to commend, I've visited the facilities,
Yes, sir.
and the efficiencies are very, very impressive. How everything is maximized, from shipping down to the smallest detail. And that is refreshing. That is what I'm looking for from others in this sunset review process. So I want to commend you for that publicly.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Can you give me an update on your board members and their expiration dates?
The board members are appointed, of course, by the governor. That information was sent to the legislature to
Is
be
it the same
reappointed.
names
So
or-
they're the same. Colonel Spencer, Ms. Morissette, and Mr. Knight are still the same board members.
And what date was that sent to the legislature?
Let me ask.
Okay.
Certainly, to the extent that anybody, if you need, there's questions that need answers, we welcome any input from anybody that you brought with you. So,
Yeah, have your team stand up and introduce them.
This is David Peacock. He's our chief legal counsel.
Just briefly, I don't have an exact date about when they were appointed, but I think it was about a year and a half ago.
So you're saying they've been reappointed, or because this was
That
as
would
of
be the reappointment, correct, Randy? That was the replacement date. They replaced the previous board.
all right? Because I have a January 31st letter saying it's Colonel Alan Spencer, Melissa Morissette, and Representative John Knight, but it shows their expiration date being of April 12th, 2022. So this would be, out of compliance. I just was wondering if this letter is wrong, or if you're waiting on the legislature to do something.
I believe they carried out the terms of their predecessors. I believe that's how it happened, and then the governor appointed them then for a full term. That was my understanding. I don't have any documents to confirm that. That was my understanding.
Right. I'm just trying to check some of the information that we've been given and making sure that it's accurate and up to date.
It's my understanding they have been reappointed by the governor. That hasn't been ratified by the legislature, but I will make sure I get that.
Right. Because if it's a problem on our end, we want to know so that we can also self-police.
Okay.
And of course, they serve until any successor is appointed and ratified. So they're still serving as the board members.
I may have missed this. Are all of them on that same cycle then? Or Ms. Riddle, if you don't have any information, you want to jump in?
Their law says that, so that he's in compliance with their law, because, so it says if it expires, they can stay till it gets reappointed. What they're saying is the governor has sent them over here, and it just hadn't gone through the full Senate confirmation process.
Oh.
So it's held up here.
All righty. That's what I thought I heard. But just hello,
You
guys.
you heard Senate, huh? I like it. I know. I like when you were saying we, and then it becomes an issue. So
Let it be noted, I'm not on that committee, sir.
I'm not anymore either. So
Well, and I think though that what communication do we have? Because like I said, we want efficiencies out of them, and I want to make sure that as the sunset, we also review our own. And how do we interact at this point, legal? I mean, to send a message that this board has come before us.
Well,
First, I want to make sure all that's accurate. I'll take what y'all have
It
said.
is.
well, in defense of the Senate, I don't. We can't act on if not sure if there are any names that were sent over, but we can't act on if there's if there's not any names that are sent over to us. So I guess that's something from those appointing authorities, be it
I guess
whichever office it may.
I guess what I'm saying is I want to learn more about that process. So whoever wants to educate me, or whoever, if we have a member on this committee that can educate me, or if the LSA can. Thank y'all so much. Thank you.
That's my house.
No, no.
You can move into my district. All right. Members, questions, comments, concerns, Representative Underwood?
I have one. Mine's more along the lines of a comment, not at all affecting your management of your department at all. And a lot of this is a learning curve for me, which we've worked out a lot in between. So I thank you for the information you've given me. But when we talk about efficiencies, I think that applies to everyone, not just the board, but the way that we as a state government interacts with your board. And there's an amount in the Department of Finance for SBS billing, which is management and personnel services provided by the state. Is that correct? See, and it's approaching $1 million, and I'm just not sure exactly what that provision that they're doing for you, what they're providing. And like, again, that's not your management. It's just I want to know how efficient we're relating to you as well. So the state's billed you $1 million almost for some personnel and payroll management services, and just not familiar exactly what that is. But if we're going to ask you to be efficient, we need to be the same. And I don't know if you have a comment about what they do for you or not. It's okay if you don't, but just letting you know that that's just something that's just came to my attention.
Well, they do a couple of things for us. Of course, we have a information technology division. We have a finance division. They all work through the state's finance department, and of course, they do bill us for those things. And our personnel works through the state personnel agency. So we get billed for each of those things. Like our IT goes to the state IT system, and we pay our bills. We don't have a separate checking account like I heard something mentioned earlier. We go through the budget and disbursement process, and there is a charge for all those things we do. And we have a lot of money going through, so the $1 million isn't a lot compared to
Right.
the total amount we do.
Right. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
One of your funds where it goes down to the county level, and I know this may not be in y'all's perusal, but a couple of years ago, I was looking at the beer tax distributions in Mobile County, and I found one of the local little ballpark associations was sorely lacking in receipts when I had asked, and they were very reluctant to show me. So do y'all have any processes in place that y'all dig down to the disbursements, or once you disperse, that's out of your realm? I'd just like to know.
Well, in fact, one of the things I wrote in my notes was to say that there are no strings attached on the money that we give to the state and local agencies. So there's no earmarking of those funds that we're aware of. So they can do what they like with them. We don't tell them what to do with them.
Thank you.
Members, Any other questions, comments, concerns? Any other statements that you'd like to make?
Yes, sir. Just one last statement. The state does not appropriate any money to operate this agency. We fund ourselves through our sales, so there's no money in the budget to operate this agency. In fact, as I've said, we give $354 million back to the state or local governments in some way, so it doesn't cost the state budgets anything for us to operate.
Thank you, Administrator Stewart. Thank you all for coming. You're the staff and the folks that you bring with you today. I know that we interact with them, outside the Sunset Committee occasionally, and we just appreciate their willingness to be here with you and you to share your comments with us.
And Representative Wood, did you say that you wanted me to introduce the people? If I've got a minute, I'd like to.
Well, yes, sir, please. It's Wilcox, and yes.
I'm sorry. Okay. This is Greg Sims. He's in charge of our tax and trade. He does the auditing. He's the director of the auditing that we do on our licensees. Neil Graff, he's operations manager. He is overall in charge of product stores and making sure that people get what they need. Next is Randy Winkler. He's the assistant administrator, fairly new like I am. Okay. William Goodwin is our head of accounting and finance. He's the one that pays the bills and makes sure that the money goes to the entities that are supposed to get it. He distributes that $354 million. Summer Childers, she's in charge of licensing. She's the one that reviews everyone's application to make sure, checks their background and make sure they're qualified to be in the liquor business. And if there are issues with their license, she's the one that. And David Peacock already came up. He's our chief legal counsel. And Mr. Randy Dempsey is outside counsel for the board. And Dean Argo on the other side. He's our governmental relations manager. You guys probably already know him.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for having your team available and available for questions as well. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Thank y'all. Appreciate you coming. All right. Running a few minutes ahead of time. Ms. Kervin, any issues about starting a few minutes early on each of those, or
Mr. Chairman.
in reason?
Mr. Chairman, the House is going to go into session at 10.
Okay.
It is.
We do have a break coming up. Okay.
We can just run and go do that, but if there's any way, this is generally about the speed. It's generally about 15 minutes per group. I don't know if it's possible to contact the people that we've told to come in at 12:30 and 1 and 1:30 and 2 and see if, hey, they can scoot on here a little bit. But, I mean, please, y'all schedule the meeting. I just don't know.
We run into any legal problems doing that? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll kind of offline. We'll kind of try to figure that out and see if we can make contact with some of those folks. So, all right. Thank you. We'll have a break and meet back here at looks like 10:30. If you can be back a few minutes before, that'd be great. Okay. All right. Good deal. Okay. Thank you. We'll be in recess till then.
Back to